What's up guys, Fernando here, aka JNandezPoker, and welcome to a video where I'm going to give you 3 tips, the 3 most important major tips to understand pre-flop play in Pot Limit Omaha. Now, if you haven't played Pot Limit Omaha before, this is exactly a video for you. If you haven't really learned Pot Limit Omaha in any structured way, this video is definitely going to be something tangible that you can take away and implement today. Something that will open up your eyes and make it much easier for you to find a way into Pot Limit Omaha. So we are going to build 3 of those little boxes. Here we go. And what we're going to describe in those boxes are the components of a pre-flop hand. Okay, here we go. So there are different components a pre-flop hand can have. And they're known in PLO, but even in No Limit Holdem as S for suitedness, then C for connectivity, and H for high card strength. Now, if you think about No Limit Holdem, in No Limit Holdem, we already have those type of components and hands. If you think about the strength of a hand, if you think about categorizing a hand, basically. So in No Limit Holdem, we would have something like a suited hand. Maybe that could be, you know, something like a 9-4 suited, right, of hearts. So that is a suited hand in No Limit Holdem. Obviously, I mean, we all probably know that. Now, there's also connected hands, maybe like a 10-9 offsuit. That could be a connected hand. And a high card strength, you know, maybe a hand like 2 queens, all right? So those are directly attached to those attributes. This is a suited hand, connected hand, and a high card, heavy hand. And the same principles here can also be used, the same components, in order to describe a hand pre-flop in Pot Limit Omaha. Let's have a look what that means in translation. So again, guys, I'm gonna give you something that you can apply right away with your No Limit Holdem knowledge. So we have PLO here, and a PLO hand that is suited, you know, could be something, for example, like an ace of spades and a 10 of spades, and then we would use some hearts. Maybe you use something like a king of hearts and a 3 of hearts. So this hand here is actually classified as a double suited hand. So double suited hand means that we have 2 chances to make a flush. We have 2 hearts and we have 2 spades, double suited. Here we go. Usually abbreviation is DS. Okay. Now connectivity, obviously we have some very connected hands in PLO. They're pretty amazing and fun to play. A hand, let's say like 9-8-7-6. That's a connected hand, you know, one straight line. Actually, because this one has no gap, so a gap would be 9-8-7-5, for example. There would be a gap in between. Because there's no gap, we actually call this hand a pure connector. Okay, so this is a pure connector. Again, the main attribute of this hand is going to be connectivity. All right. And then the next one is going to be high card strength. You know, in No Limit Holdem, for example, we have those 2 queens here on top. And in PLO, it could be something like 2 kings and then a queen and a 10. A lot of high cards. So you can see the same components that are already used in No Limit Holdem are especially important to understand pre-flop play in Pot Limit Omaha. Now, what you can do now in No Limit Holdem as well as in PLO is you can actually combine them together. So you can say, all right, what if we combine a couple of them together? So let's think about a hand that has high card strength, so has the H, is connected and is suited in No Limit Holdem. That could be a hand, let's say like Queen Jack suited, so 2 hearts. That is a hand that has some high cards, has some connectivity, and also has some suits. Now let's think about the same idea for Pot Limit Omaha. Okay, so I'm going to use a hand that has all 3 attributes here. Not sure where we have enough space. Let's use maybe this section here and point it downwards here, okay? So let's use a hand that has all 3 components. We're going to start with an ace. That's usually a good starting point in PLO when it comes to high card heavy hands. Let's start here one more time. So we have an ace, and let's say we have another ace, so 2 aces. And then we have a hand like a jack and a hand like a 10. And the hand is double suited. You can see we have 2 hearts, 2 spades. Again, this hand labeled as DS which describes double suited. Now this hand has the H, the C, and the S. And the thing in PLO is when you combine those components together, so when you use a plus sign here and a plus sign here, you have what we call a multi-component hand. So you can see here a multi-component hand. And the more components you have, usually the stronger your hand becomes. But more about that just in a second. The main thing I want you to realize is the more components you have that you can combine together, the stronger the hand is. Now let's have a look at one more other example of a hand that has only 2 components, which is better than 1 component. So let's say we have a 9 of diamonds and an 8 of diamonds. And then we also have, let's say, some clubs. We're gonna use a 4-color deck here, by the way. So let's say we have the 9, 8, 7, 6. And as you can see, we have 2 suits. So we have a double suited hand here one more time. But the component that is missing is gonna be high card strength, right? We have a suited hand or a double suited hand, more so a connected hand. But what is missing is that third component. And that is why 9, 8, 7, 6 is gonna be always a weaker hand than ace, ace, jack 10 double suited, because it has only 2 components instead of 3 components. All right, I hope this is pretty much clear so far. Of course, if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below about how those components are exactly working. But now I'm gonna take it to the next level here. Think about the components. And now we're gonna go over and talk about how do we actually find now, given this very basic, fast knowledge, how are we gonna find a good strategy? I'm gonna use this grid here. And as we already know, we can define on the one hand, we can define a hand based on how many components it has. Already talked about that. I'm gonna use the vertical axe for it. So the amount of components we have. All right. And you know, the possibilities are 3 components or 2 components or 1 component. Here we go. Actually, I want to do this a little bit different. 1 second. So the hand can have 3 components, or it can have 2 components or 1 component. There we go. Now the new element that I want to really help bring to your attention is, apart from only thinking about the amount of components we have, we should certainly also think about the quality of those components. Right? And what that exactly means and how to break that down here just in a moment. Now, there are all sorts of different hands that belong here or here. You know, we can point at any point in this system, and then we can pick out a hand and we would know what it would be depending on how many components it has and how high the quality is. Of course, in this direction, it increases in quality, and then offwards, vertical, it would increase in the amount of components we have. And here at the very top corner, we would have the absolute nuts. So that would be something like ace, ace. It's the double suits here. So that would be ace, ace. I mean, people are discussing if it's ace, ace, king, king. But for the sake of argument here, because we are also thinking a lot about connectivity, and that is not the best connected hand, you know, for illustrative purposes, this is also at the very top of the hands anyway. Ace, ace, jack 10, double suited, right? So at the very top of the corner, we would have those type of hands here because they have the highest amount of quality and they would have 3 components. That's how a hand becomes good. And of course, even if you haven't played PLO yet, or if PLO is quite new to you, this is pretty obvious, like that those hands are the best. But the more important question is like, what is in between and how do we categorize it and how do we execute that in terms of strategy? So let's talk about that here. So I'm going to use a little bit of a categorization system here. All right. Just this line and this line here. And then also some vertical lines. All right, some real skills necessary for this. All right, here we go, guys. Hopefully everything is clear so far. Again, if you have any questions, just let me know. So now we're gonna flick in some hands here. in order to get an idea on, this went just a little bit too small, let's put it that way. Okay, to get an idea on, you know, where certain hands will belong. So for example, here at the bottom, you would have a hand with very high quality, right? That has not a lot of components. In fact, it only has one component. So let's start with high quality, aces, okay? But then the side cards are not giving additional components. So we have ace, ace, 7 deuce, rainbow. And rainbow means we have 4 of a different suit. So that way it's very clear this is a single component hand, and the component that we have here is H, high card strength. We don't have suits and we don't have connectivity. Again, the 3 components are suits, connectivity, and high card strength. There we go. Now let's say we want to move this one up here and add a component to the hand. It's pretty easy actually. We're gonna stick with ace, ace, 7 deuce, but we're just going to increase the amount of components by adding in a second component, which is suits here, double suited. And now our hand increased in value, of course. This double suited hand here, we can label it as DS, has now 2 components. And this is actually a very stellar hand in PLO, specifically because it's aces. But you can also think, of course, of hands like king, king. Let's say we have a hand like king, king, 7-5 double suited. Like that hand also has 2 high cards, or you know, a high pair basically, and then 2 suits. So it's a double suited hand here in the middling section. Now, if you want to downgrade this hand in this direction, it would take away the quality of the component. So let's say from aces we go down to 10s. We have like 10, 10, 9, 5. So 10, 10, 9, 5, even when single suited. So if we have the 10 of spades and the 9 of spades, for example, even single suited, like the main component here remains just like the high card pair, like the high card strength, you can say. Just the quality of it is pretty poor. And then, you know, it would go down all the way, of course, here in this direction. We can move it even more down and can say we have like a king, 10, let's say 7-3. I mean, this hand, rainbow or single suited, doesn't really matter. This is going to be a pretty weak hand, right? And it's really hard to even label what is the main component here, but let's say it's like the king 10. It's probably the best thing in this hand, and the quality of it is really poor. Now let's improve the ace, ace, 7 deuce, which is more fun, a better hand here, and add a third component. And if you paid attention to this one here, you know that we already had the S and we had the H. So suitedness and high card strength, we need to add in the connectivity. So we're going to use ace, ace one more time, but this time we're going to use ace, ace, jack 10. And now this makes obviously a 3 component hand, double suited. And we have here 1, 2, 3 component, the S, the H, and the C. Those are the best hands. Now let's fill in a couple of other example hands to make this more illustrative here for you guys, so that you guys have a pretty decent understanding of what I'm talking about here. So in the middle here, for example, we need 2 components with decent quality, not great quality, maybe a hand like 9-8 and 7-6 double suited. So pretty clearly, this hand here has obviously the double suitedness, so an S, and it also has the connectivity. The only thing that's missing in order to make it a 3 component hand would be high cards. So let's invent one of those hands here on top. Let's say we have a hand like queen, jack, and now we come along with 10-9. So this hand is connected, has 2 suits, it has all 3 components, but it's not on the same level necessarily as a ace, ace, jack 10, right? Pretty good hand, of course, in PLO. Let's find a hand that has here in the top left corner 3 components, but is not as stellar in quality like the other hands. That could be a hand, let's say like king, queen of spades, or that's actually not possible for what I'm trying to do here. Let's say it would be king, 9 of spades, and then we use the queen of clubs and the 9 of clubs. This hand is well double suited, has some connectivity, some high suits, some high cards, but of course not on the level of this hand, not on the level of that hand in terms of the quality. Although it has the same amount of components, it is a weaker hand in general. And let's fill out and an important section here for sure is this one here in the low quality 2 component hands. Let's say we have a hand like a jack 10, all right? And then we're going to use diamonds this time, jack 10, 5-3. double suited, all right? So this hand here is double, double suited, it has some connectivity. Sure, we have like Jack 10, 5, 3, but the quality of it is very speculative in PLO. And a lot of those hands here in this section specifically, I'm actually already gonna mark it out. This section here, a lot of players are overvaluing the double suited hands and are playing them too often. Now, let's attach a couple of strategies here to now what we learned so far. So the hands here on top that have 3 components. The main thing to really think about is those hands here, they are always playable, okay? And the hands that have 2 components and high quality, they're also always playable. All right, here we go. This is not good. One more time. Bear with me, guys. All right, those hands are always playable. And I would say the main goal with those is to put in more cash in the middle, okay? In general, of course, the higher the hand goes to this top right corner here, the more likely it is you should put in more money into the pot, 3-bet, 4-bet, 5-bet, and so on. Then the next subsection would be those hands in here. 2 components, quality not at the top end, and then also 1 component hands right here. 1 component, but very high quality. Now those hands are often playable, very often playable. All right, so you're gonna VPIP very often with those hands, voluntarily put money into the pot, but you're trying to play single raise pots, you're going to defend the big blind, you're going to, steal. That's the main purpose of those hands. And again, to come back one more time to this section here, because a lot of players are actually overplaying those hands, they look kind of good. This is mainly meant for a steal or for a defend in the big blind, but only when it's heads up. Now, this is another concept I'm just gonna dive very quickly into. I don't want to make this too long for you guys as a starting point, but when you have low quality, it is really, like low quality means that the hand increases in value against one opponent and decreases against multiple opponents. The way you want to think about it is, the more players are in the pot, the higher of a quality starting hand you need in order to outdraw your opponents, in order to dominate your opponents. Pot limit Omaha is all about domination. You want to have the better flush draw, the better sets, the better straight draws. And the more opponents are entering the pot, the more likely it is that your weak draw will be dominated. And of course, this section here, the section of Jack 10, 5, 3, obviously will have like a lot of, it's very easy for this hand to be dominated, specifically if you play a hand against multiple players. So keep that in mind. Those type of hands, don't overplay them, enter the pot with the green ones and re-raise here with the top right. I hope this was really helpful to you guys. The main major components. If you want to have more of those tips, definitely follow me on Facebook at JNandezPoker. I put out free tips like that all the time. Also on Instagram or on YouTube, everywhere at JNandezPoker. I'll link a couple of those links here below. Let me know if you have any questions, if you appreciate this type of content as well. I'm over and out. Fernando, aka JNandez87.